In this video, you will learn how to find the slope if you're given 2 points. So there is a formula for slope, and it looks like this. And all that formula is saying is to find the change of the y values in the numerator, and then find the change of the x's in the denominator. So notice in this formula it has this little y2 thing there and the y1. All that means is we have 2 ordered pairs. So if the first number we know is x, and the second number we know is y, and we have an x and a y here. So we need to differentiate between the two of them. So I'm going to have this one be x1 and y1 because they're both x's and y's, but this is going to be my first ordered pair and this one's going to be my second ordered pair. And all this formula is saying is to subtract the y's first. So we're going to take the y's. So notice this formula here says to take y2 and subtract y1. So the formula is saying to take y2, which is the 1, and subtract y1, and then to take x2 and subtract x1. And when you do that, you'll get a -2 over a -2, which we learned about how to write slopes as either an integer or simplified fraction. So -2 divided by -2 is +1. So we get a slope of 1. Now, this formula right here, it's really weird. A lot of textbooks will write the formula for slope as y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1, but I don't use that actually. So let me show you what I mean. So you could see that we got the answer of 1. Now I'm going to redo this problem, but instead of how they write it in every textbook that you'll see, instead I'm going to flip this. I'm going to do y1, because 1 comes before 2, it just makes sense, minus y2. So I'm just going to switch this all around here. And you will see that it does not make a difference. So this is how I do it. I label this x and y, and this x and y. And then what I do is I set up my setup. I know there's going to be subtraction in between. And then all I do is I know that the numerator is the y's, because that's what goes with the rise, the up and down movement. And that's the y-axis, that on the y-axis that goes up. And we can go down on the y-axis. So that helps me memorize and remember that we're going to subtract the y's. So I'm going to take the y values, so the 3 and the 1, and I'm going to bring it down and subtract them. But notice again, it went straight down. And then I'm going to take the 4 and the 2 and subtract those. And then we will get 2 over 2, which is the same thing we got before. So what I'm trying to show you is you could use either of these formulas, and they both are equivalent here. So now we know, because we've talked about before, that since the slope is +1, if it's positive, that the line will go up. And notice over here I do have the graph graphed for us, and from the left to the right, notice it is going up. So let me make sure it's very clear what we just found out. So we just took these 2 points right here. Okay, so notice I have them graphed here and here. And what we just found was we found that the slope was 1. Well, in the previous part of this lesson, we talked about rise over run. So let's check and see if we do get 1. So we just figured out that the slope was 1 without looking at a graph. Now let's look at a graph and see if it works. So we're going to go rise, 1, 2, and then we're going to run, 1, 2, and notice we get 1. So all we're doing is we're doing the same thing we did in the first part of this lesson, which is to find the slope using rise over run given a graph, and now we just don't have the graph. So we're finding the change in the y and the change in the x. So let's try another one out here. So we are asked to find the slope. So I'm going to do every single problem, same setup. I'm going to have that ready to go here. And then I'm going to remember, so I can memorize the formula. This will help me rise over run, because rise is how much you go up or down, and that is the y's, and the run is the x. So now that I know which one goes first, I'm going to go ahead and take my, and if I want to label them, I can. This is x and this is y. And I'm going to take the y's and subtract them. And then I'm going to take the x's and subtract them. And 6 minus 4 is 2. And 2 minus 5 is negative 3. So then we have a positive number divided by a negative number. And a positive divided by a negative is a negative. And then 2/3 is already simplified. So the slope is negative 2/3. We do not leave the negative in the denominator. We either put it in the front or we write it like this. But we don't ever leave it in the denominator. So because the slope here is negative, we know that the line will go down. So the line will go something like this. It will go downward. So that's what that slope tells us. Now let's check it. So what we just did was without having to use a graph, we did rise 2. Notice that's what we got there. And then run 1, 2, 3. And that's what we got here. And then to get this negative here from the left to the right, it's going down. So negative. So again, the whole purpose is not to have to graph this, but I'm just showing you how it compares on a graph to what we've already done. Okay, so let's go ahead and find the slope. This is x, this is y. And I know rise over run, and the rise is the up and down movement. So that's the y's and that's the x's. So I'm going to take the y's and subtract them. And then I'm going to take the x's and subtract them. And here we have 0 divided by 9. And I know that 0 divided by 9 is 0. So we get a slope of 0. And remember, if we think about that analogy I gave you to remember the slope of 0, remember if someone's snowboarding, they're happy, they're just walking along on the snow. So that would make a slope of 0 would make a horizontal line. And if you weren't sure, if you were to graph those 2 points, you can see when you graph them that it is a horizontal line. Okay, let's try this next one here. And feel free to pause the video and try it first on your own. That would be a great idea if you feel comfortable with what we're doing right now. And then we're going to take the y's and subtract them. And then we're going to take the x's and subtract them. And here we get 6 over negative 2. And 6 divided by negative 2 is a negative 3. So because this slope here is negative, we know that the line will go down from the left to the right. It will look something like that. So let's go ahead and check it. So if we graph the 2 points here, we would have rise 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, which that's what we had here. and then we have to go over 2, which is what we had here. And how we would know it's negative is if we connected the points, it's going down. From the left here to the right here, it's going downwards. Okay, let's take a look at this one here. So we're going to take the y's and subtract them. Then we're going to take the x's here and subtract them. And we get positive 5 divided by 0. And when the zero's in the denominator, it's under the line. That helps me remember this is undefined, this slope. That's what we call it. And remember, mathematically, 5 divided by 0, there is nothing times 0 that would equal 5. So we know it's undefined now. And if we think about the analogy I gave you with the snowboarder, that would not be a good idea. He would be stuck under the snow if we went vertically down into the snow like that. So we would have a vertical line for this one. And if we go ahead and check it and graph the line, you could see it is a vertical line. Okay, let's go ahead and check this one here. So we're going to take our y values and subtract them. And then we're going to take our x values and subtract them. And here we have a negative divided by a negative, which we know is a positive. And 3, since the smaller number is on top here, we know that 3 divided by 6 is a decimal. So we're going to simplify the fraction to 1/3. So the slope is positive 1/3. And since it's positive, we know from the left to the right, the line is going to go upward. And we know that again because this is a positive slope. Now let's check it. If we graph these 2 points here and then we connect it, you could see that the line does go up.